Hello my little droogies, I am back. It is day 30 of Preptober. We are so close to NaNoWriMo and we have almost completely finished preparing. We have our plot, we have our characters, we have our world. We have an outline, we have a community, and we have our schedules prepared. There is very little left for us to do, but one last thing that we can do before NaNoWriMo begins is decide on how exactly we are going to begin our novels. Now, you can begin your novel any way you want. It is your story, it is completely up to you. But if you are hoping to publish your novel one day, and if you want your novel to sell, you are going to need to grab the reader's attention straight away with a really gripping hook. If you include self-published books, it is estimated that 11,000 books are published every single day. Not month, not year, day. 11,000 books a day. So if you want your book to stand out, you can't wait until chapter 3 before your novel starts to get interesting. You have to grab the reader's attention with the opening chapter, the opening paragraph, and the opening line. So what are some ways that you can do this? What is a good way to hook your reader? Well, there are several really popular ways to begin a book. The first one that I'm going to recommend is start your book with a dead body. If there is a dead body in the opening chapter of your book, the readers are going to want to know how that person died. They will not be able to find out how that person died unless they keep reading the book. So right away, you've got them. You've grabbed the reader's attention and they are going to keep reading until they have the answers that they are looking for. So, just for fun, I am going to write some opening paragraphs for novels, just to give you guys some ideas of ways that you can go about beginning your own novels. Okay, first one. Milo, put it down. John tried to say this with a firm, commanding tone, but couldn't quite keep his voice from shaking. The dog ignored him, backing a couple of steps away. He had no intention of surrendering his prize. John was going to have to pry it from his mouth. Oh God, he was going to have to touch it. Milo was always bringing things home from his walks. Sticks, food wrappers, tennis balls, even a dead rat once. But this was the first time he had stumbled across a severed human hand. There we go. So you've got a dead body, or at least you've got part of a dead body, and you have no idea who this person is or how this person died. So if the readers want to find that out, they are going to need to keep reading. The second way that you can begin a book is the "how did I get here" scenario. A character is in a scenario that is extremely dangerous or hopeless or tragic or just plain weird, and the readers are asking themselves, how did this character get themselves into this situation? Think of the beginning of Breaking Bad, where Walter White is standing in the middle of the desert in his underwear, recording a final goodbye message for his family as the police sirens get closer and closer. How did he get there? Well, you'll never find out unless you carry on watching the show. So, as an example of this method, I have only 2 lines. I know what you're thinking. What's a nice girl like me doing in a cell like this? So that is pretty much literally asking, how did I get here? You have a woman, from just these couple of lines you can tell that she is pretty relaxed, she has a bit of a sense of humour. What did she do to get herself in prison? The novel that I am writing for NaNoWriMo actually begins in a very similar way. The protagonist is in jail. He is sentenced to execution and he is in his cell with a pen and paper writing down his memoir and essentially his confession. So if the reader wants to know what he did, what crimes he committed, then they're just going to have to keep on reading. The third gripping way that a writer can begin a novel is with a life-changing event. Something that completely changes the course of the protagonist's life forever. The death of a loved one, a divorce, an accident that leaves them severely injured, the loss of a job, winning the lottery. It doesn't necessarily have to be something bad. Just an event where the protagonist can say, okay, everything that happened before this point was my old life, and everything that happens after this event is my new life. So here's the example. it hurts. It doesn't matter what anybody says, that you're too good for him, that you deserve so much better, that he's making the biggest mistake of his life, that he'll regret it, that he'll be back. None of it matters. Being left at the altar hurts, and nothing anybody says can make it hurt any less. So this gets the reader asking questions and wanting to know more. Why did the woman's fiancé leave her at the altar? Did he just get cold feet? Is he cheating on her? Did she cheat on him? Maybe he didn't leave her at the altar. Maybe something happened to him that prevented him from getting there. But mostly the readers are going to want to know how this woman is going to cope after the love of her life has abandoned her, and how she is going to move on with her life. Another way that you can hook a reader is by introducing an exceptional world. A fantasy world, a sci-fi world, a dystopian world, a world that is very different to the world that we live in. Now, you can't just describe the landscape and the geography. You have to demonstrate how this world is different through observing the characters and seeing what life in this world is like for them. So the example is, Lara groaned as the alarm went off. Not the alarm clock, of course. Last she checked, she hadn't set that for 3:28 in the morning. Besides, the security alarm that currently blared over the speakers was considerably louder and more obnoxious. But it certainly got the job done. Lara rolled out of bed, not even bothering to get dressed before she grabbed her torch and, still half asleep, stumbled outside to see what had triggered the security system. Waving the torch from left to right, she let out a heavy sigh of frustration when she caught sight of the problem. One of the undead had gotten stuck in the fence again, and the security alarm wouldn't switch off until she managed to pry it free. Well, no way she was going to be able to sleep through this ungodly racket. Better get to work. So, as you can see, this is some kind of zombie apocalypse world. A kind of world where people need high-tech security fences just to survive, and where having a zombie stumbling around your home in the middle of the night is such a regular occurrence that it is considered more of an annoyance than a threat. So, if that is the kind of world that some of the readers might find interesting, then they will probably want to read more. Now, the fifth example is beginning your novel with a different character. Most novels are going to have a single protagonist that they follow throughout the length of the novel. But what if that character's story begins in a really boring way? What if your protagonist is a common country farm boy who dreams of adventure and excitement, but knows that will never happen to him because he isn't special and nothing exciting ever happens to him? Well, that can be a pretty boring place for a novel to begin. So how about instead, the novel begins with the princess being captured, or the wise old mentor fighting his way through an army of goblins? Or what if it starts from the point of view of the villain? "Where is the boy?" Caleb asked before turning the thumbscrew once more. The woman let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the walls of the dungeon. Caleb hated torturing women. Not because of any moral qualms, of course. It was those high-pitched screams, so much more jarring than a man's cries of anguish. They grated at his every nerve. Not to mention how sore his wrists would get from all the constant tightening of screws, squeezing of clamps, and swinging of hammers. But such was the thankless job of the torturer. Nobody appreciated him. Nobody. So, however boring the protagonist's life might be at the beginning of the story, things are certainly not boring in this dungeon with the evil torturer and his poor, unfortunate victim. The next method for starting your novel that I'm going to look at is beginning your novel with a question. Now, regardless of how else you begin your novel, you should be doing this anyway. Your first chapter should always leave the readers with unanswered questions that they will want to learn the answers to. Here's an example. The melody of the organ echoed over the stone walls and floors, but it could not drown out the sound of tears. A river of black ran through the church as the pews filled with mourners, some even forced to stand. She had booked the largest church hall she could find. Still, it wasn't large enough to accommodate everyone who had loved and admired her father. Hayley stepped towards the open casket, looked down on her father's face, and spat in it. So there's a question that people are going to want to know the answers to. Hayley's father is clearly a man who was loved and respected by many, many people, but not Hayley. Hayley hated her father so much that she spat in his face at his funeral. Why? What could he have done to make her hate him so much? And it starts with a dead body, so killing two birds with one stone. And the final example we're going to look at is beginning with an emotional connection, getting your readers really heavily emotionally invested in your characters right from the very beginning, and making your readers feel extremely strong emotions. Emotions like love, hate, joy, anger, and sorrow. So the example I have written for this scenario is, "Please don't shave it off, Mummy," Sophie begged as her mother moved the razor closer to her head. Hannah held back tears as she gently stroked her daughter's hair for the last time. "It's going to fall out anyway, darling, and the doctor says that shaving it will stop your scalp getting itchy." "Please," Sophie begged once more, tears streaming down her face. Hannah held her breath as her fingers toyed with her daughter's curls. Her perfect blonde curls. She was trying her best to stay strong, but the truth was, shaving away her daughter's beautiful hair was going to break her heart just as much as it broke Sophie's heart to lose it. "We can get you wigs," Hannah suggested, trying to sound encouraging and upbeat. "All sorts of different colours, and scarves and pretty hats, anything you want." "I want my hair," Sophie protested through stifled sobs. A single tear rolled down Hannah's cheek as she leant forward to kiss her daughter's forehead. "I know, baby," she whispered to her daughter. "I know." So here, straight away, your readers are going to have an extremely strong sense of sympathy towards both of the characters, and they're going to feel the strong bond and feelings of love between the mother and the daughter, but also the sorrow and pain and the fear. Because while the mother is extremely upset that she needs to shave her daughter's hair off, it is not really about the hair. It is not the hair that she is afraid of losing. She is afraid of losing her daughter. The next piece of advice I would give is end the chapter with a cliffhanger. I haven't written down an example for this because this is something that would happen at the end of the chapter, not at the beginning. But it is a really good way to grip your reader's attention. It is pretty normal for online bookstores to allow potential customers to read the opening chapter of a novel for free to let them get an idea of whether or not they would want to read more. Now, an opening chapter of a novel could be really well written and have beautiful prose and just be everything that the reader is looking for in a novel. But if the opening chapter does not end with a cliffhanger, a lot of the time the reader will just think, yeah, that looks like a really good book. I'll need to read that sometime. And then put that book on their want to read list and then completely forget about it. But if the opening chapter of your novel ends with a really gripping cliffhanger, then the reader isn't going to want to read that book sometime, they'll want to read it right now because they'll want to know what happens next. And completely contrary to all of the advice I have given up until this point, the last piece of advice that I will give for writing an opening chapter or for writing any chapter is rules are made to be broken. An author can read every piece of advice that they can find on writing an opening chapter and follow that advice down to the letter, but at the end of the day, it is not the formula that makes a book worth reading, it is the author. A good writer can completely ignore every single piece of advice they have ever been given about writing and still write an amazing book. For instance, people will tell you not to begin your novel with info dumps and exposition, but The Lord of the Rings begins with the prologue concerning hobbits, which is nothing but a massive info dump. And despite that, The Lord of the Rings is probably the most popular fantasy series of all time, so a novel can break all the rules and still become extremely popular. Granted, it is a lot more difficult in this day and age when the book market is so competitive, but it is possible. So that is all the advice I can think of for now. The examples I have given I am going to throw out as adoptables, so if any of you feel like using any of those examples or something similar to them to begin your own novels, feel free. I am not going to do anything with them. Your homework for today is to have a think about how you want to begin your novel. What are you going to do in order to grip the reader's attention right from the very beginning? How are you going to hook them? What questions are you going to get your readers asking? What do you want your readers to feel? How are you going to establish an emotional connection between your readers and your characters? Tomorrow is the last day of October. We have done all the planning that we can possibly do. And in tomorrow's video, I am just going to be giving you guys general advice on tips that you can use to help you win NaNoWriMo. That is me finished for today. I am getting so excited. NaNoWriMo is so close. It's weird. If anything, I feel underprepared rather than overprepared, but that's just me and my plotter nature seeping through, I guess. If you guys have any advice of your own on what you think is the best way to begin a novel, please leave a comment letting me know. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I really hope I see you guys tomorrow for the last video of my Preptober vlog.